Hello, my dear listeners. Welcome. I'm your guide through this evening's journey, and I'm so genuinely glad you found your way here. Pour yourself something warm, find a place where the world can't quite reach you for a moment, and let's talk about a story that has haunted and enchanted people for centuries. My name is Fox, and I've spent considerable time with the great stories, the ones that burrow into us, that ask difficult questions about beauty and worthiness and transformation. And I'll be honest with you, Beauty and the Beast is one of those stories that reveals something different to you every time you encounter it. When you read it as a child, it's about good triumphing over cruelty. When you return it as an adult, it becomes something far more complex, a meditation on perception, on love that sees beyond surfaces, on the terrible vulnerability of truly being known. The version we're exploring tonight comes to us primarily through the telling of Gabrielle Suzanne Barbeau de Villeneuve, who first published this tale in 1740 in her collection La Jeune Américaine. But the story didn't stop there. Jean-Marie Leprince de Beaumont would later condense and refine it, and it's a combination of these tellings, these French fairy tales born from the Age of Enlightenment, that have shaped every adaptation since. Disney's animators drew from it. Broadway composers built musicals from it. Countless authors have retold it, reimagined it, twisted it, and made it their own. Why does this story endure? Because at its heart, it asks us to examine our assumptions. It takes the heroine, intelligent, bookish, unwilling to accept the conventional world's definitions of beauty and worth, and places her in a situation that forces genuine moral reckoning. And the Beast himself, well, he's not a monster who learns to be good. He's something more interesting than that. He's a person trapped by his own nature, by cruelty, both received and inflicted, waiting for someone to see him as he actually is, not as he appears. The prose you're about to hear carries the elegance of 18th century French storytelling, careful, deliberate, with a quality of moral seriousness beneath the romance. It's not a quick read, it's a meditation. The sentences breathe, the descriptions linger. The psychological depth of the characters emerges gradually, like a painting being revealed. If you find this story moving, if you'd like to support the creation of more such evenings, you can find me on Patreon or through the links in your show notes. But whether you're here for the first time or the 100th, what I ask is simply this: come with an open mind. Let yourself be transported to a castle where magic is real and danger lurks in beauty, where the greatest transformations happen not through spells, but through genuine connection. So, settle in. Imagine the crackle of a fire, the weight of a book in your hands, the peculiar peace of being entirely elsewhere. We're about to meet a young woman named Belle, who loves stories and who is about to become one herself. And now, Beauty and the Beast. Part 1. The Merchant's Daughters. In a certain country, there once lived a merchant of considerable wealth and respectability. He had possessed a grand fortune, a beautiful wife, and 6 children, 3 sons and 3 daughters, whom he educated with every advantage that money could procure and affection suggest. His wife had died some years before the period at which our story opens, and he had never remarried, devoting himself instead to the management of his estates and the supervision of his children's characters. For many years, the family lived in a state of affluence and comfort. The daughters, in particular, had grown into young women of considerable beauty and accomplishment. They were sought after in society, receiving invitations to every gathering of note, and they accepted these attentions with the ease of those accustomed to admiration. They wore the finest clothes, consulted the most fashionable dressmakers, and spoke with the refined accents of those who had never known want. The youngest daughter, however, was of a different character entirely. Her name was Belle, though this was a name she had acquired through general affection rather than through any particular vanity about her appearance. While her elder sisters were undeniably beautiful, with regular features, fashionable figures, and an instinctive understanding of how to present themselves to advantage, Belle possessed a different sort of beauty altogether. It was less immediately striking, perhaps, less fashionable, but it was the sort of beauty that deepened upon acquaintance. Her eyes held a peculiar brightness, an intelligence that seemed to look past the surface of things. Her manner was gentle, her conversation thoughtful, and she possessed none of the vanity that her sisters displayed so openly. Where her sisters occupied themselves with the pursuit of eligible young men, the perfection of their dancing, and the acquisition of the finest jewels and fabrics, Belle retreated into books. She was rarely to be found in the drawing room. Instead, she could be discovered in the library, a room her father had built expressly for the storing of his collection, surrounded by volumes bound in leather, their spines gilded with gold, their pages filled with the thoughts and stories of great minds. She read everything: philosophy and poetry, travel narratives and histories, stories from distant lands and ancient times. Her father found her there most afternoons, curled into a window seat with a volume open on her lap, the light catching her profile as she read. "You will ruin your eyes," her elder sister Arabelle would say, not without a note of contempt. "And what use is learning to a woman? No man of sense wishes to marry a scholar." But Belle would only smile gently and return to her book. She had long since ceased to attempt to explain herself to her sisters. They could not understand that a story, a real, true story from some distant place or distant time, was infinitely more interesting than the shallow social maneuvering of their world. In books, she found truth. In stories, she found meaning, and in the quiet sanctuary of the library, she found peace. Her father loved her dearly for her gentleness and her thoughtfulness, and he indulged her intellectual pursuits in a way that was perhaps unusual for a man of his generation and station. He bought her books whenever he traveled to the city. He listened to her thoughts about what she had read, treating her opinions with respect, and he seemed to understand, without her needing to explain, that she was somehow fundamentally different from her sisters, not better, but different in some essential way that made the usual routes to happiness less likely to satisfy her. This contentment with her lot in life, this refusal to compete with her sisters for the attention of wealthy suitors, infuriated her elder sisters. They believed Belle's preference for books and solitude was a form of pride, a quiet assertion of superiority dressed up as modesty. "She thinks herself too good for society," Arabelle would mutter to her sister Celeste, and Celeste would nod in agreement, their perfectly arranged curls bobbing in unison. If Belle heard such remarks, she did not respond to them. She was not, in fact, thinking herself too good for society. She was simply aware, with a clarity that came from reading widely and thinking deeply, that she was not the sort of woman who would ever be truly happy playing the games that women of her station were expected to play. And she had made a kind of peace with that knowledge. It was this state of contented difference, this quiet rejection of the world's expectations, that would, quite unexpectedly, become the foundation for everything that followed. Part 2. Fortune's Reversal. The merchant had always been, among all his other accomplishments, a man of business. He supervised his estates carefully, made shrewd investments, and maintained a network of associates and correspondents in the great trading cities. For many years, this diligence had paid dividends, and his wealth had only increased. But fortune, as all wise persons know, is a fickle mistress. There came a day when news reached the merchant that one of his ships, a vessel laden with goods of considerable value, had been lost at sea. The loss was significant, but not, he believed, catastrophic. He still possessed other assets, other sources of income. He could weather this storm, but the storm did not pass. Letters began to arrive with increasing frequency, each one carrying worse news than the last. Another of his ventures had failed, a partner had absconded with funds, a poor investment had crumbled. It was as though some malevolent fate had decided to test him, stripping away his security layer by layer. Within the space of 2 years, the merchant found himself in a state of financial ruin. The grand house was sold, the servants were dismissed, the horses and carriages were auctioned away. What had seemed permanent and unshakable revealed itself to be astonishingly fragile. The fine clothes were abandoned for more modest garments. The jewels, the furnishings, the books, even the library with its collection so carefully assembled over decades were liquidated to pay creditors. His 3 sons, it must be said, responded to this reversal with the resourcefulness of youth. Within a relatively short time, they had apprenticed themselves to merchants and tradesmen, found positions in established businesses, and begun the work of rebuilding what had been lost. They wrote to their father regularly, sent what money they could spare, and held out hope that in time the family fortunes might be restored. But his 3 daughters could not adapt so easily. Arabelle and Celeste, accustomed from childhood to admiration and ease, fell into a state of profound despair. The young men who had sought their company so assiduously when they were wealthy heiresses now seemed not to notice their existence at all. Dances to which they had been invited ceased to arrive. Visits were no longer paid. It was as though they had been erased from society as completely as if they had died. Worse still, they blamed their father for their fall. "If you had managed your affairs properly," Arabelle said bitterly, "if you had been more careful, more shrewd, we should not have come to this." "You have destroyed our futures," Celeste added, her voice sharp with resentment. "We might have married well, we might have been secure, and you have ruined us all." Their father bore these accusations with patient sadness. He had grown quiet in his misfortune, reflective. He seemed to have aged years in the space of months. His shoulders bent slightly forward, as though under an invisible weight. But he did not argue with his daughters. He simply looked at them with tired eyes and accepted their anger as yet another consequence of his failed judgment. It was Belle alone who did not rail against their circumstances. When the grand house was sold, she made her small chamber comfortable. When the servants left, she learned to manage the household tasks herself, the cooking and cleaning, the mending of clothes, the small domestic duties that once would have been performed by others. She worked quietly and without complaint, and she seemed to find in this labor not a punishment, but a strange sort of peace. Her father, watching her move through their reduced circumstances with gentle practicality, felt something shift in his heart. In losing everything else, he had somehow seen his youngest daughter more clearly. She possessed something that his wealth had never purchased and that his poverty could not take away. She possessed goodness, real, authentic goodness, and an inner strength that had nothing to do with external circumstances. One day, some 3 years after his financial ruin had begun, the merchant received a letter. It was from one of his oldest associates, a man with whom he had done business in the great port cities. The letter contained news. A merchant vessel bearing some of the goods that the merchant had thought lost at sea had unexpectedly arrived in port. The cargo could be claimed. A portion of the lost investment might be recovered. The merchant's heart lifted for the first time in years. He called his children together and explained the situation. The three daughters, Arabelle and Celeste, now animated by hope, and Belle, who seemed to hope for nothing but accepted the news with quiet gladness, were given the opportunity to request whatever they wished from the city. If the cargo were sold, there would be money. Not the great fortune of before, perhaps, but enough to afford them some comfort, to purchase some of the things they had lost. Arabelle and Celeste immediately began to list their desires: fabrics and jewels, a fine dress for each of them, new furnishings for the house. They spoke quickly, interrupting one another, their eyes bright with the prospect of restored ease. It was Belle alone who did not rail against their circumstances. When the grand house was sold, she made her small chamber comfortable. When the servants left, she learned to manage the household tasks herself: the cooking and cleaning, the mending of clothes, the small domestic duties that once would have been performed by others. She worked quietly and without complaint, and she seemed to find in this labor not a punishment, but a strange sort of peace. Her father, watching her move through their reduced circumstances with gentle practicality, felt something shift in his heart. In losing everything else, he had somehow seen his youngest daughter more clearly. She possessed something that his wealth had never purchased and that his poverty could not take away. She possessed goodness, real, authentic goodness, and an inner strength that had nothing to do with external circumstances. One day, some 3 years after his financial ruin had begun, the merchant received a letter. It was from one of his oldest associates, a man with whom he had done business in the great port cities. The letter contained news. A merchant vessel bearing some of the goods that the merchant had thought lost at sea had unexpectedly arrived in port. The cargo could be claimed. A portion of the lost investment might be recovered. The merchant's heart lifted for the first time in years. He called his children together and explained the situation. The three daughters, Arabelle and Celeste, now animated by hope, and Belle, who seemed to hope for nothing but accepted the news with quiet gladness, were given the opportunity to request whatever they wished from the city. If the cargo were sold, there would be money. Not the great fortune of before, perhaps, but enough to afford them some comfort, to purchase some of the things they had lost. Arabelle and Celeste immediately began to list their desires: fabrics and jewels, a fine dress for each of them, new furnishings for the house. They spoke quickly, interrupting one another, their eyes bright with the prospect of restored ease. Part 3. The Castle in the Forest. The merchant's journey to the port took several days of difficult travel. The roads were poor, winter was coming on, and the weather grew progressively worse as he drew closer to his destination. But when at last he arrived and confirmed that his goods had indeed arrived safely, his heart was gladdened. The cargo sold for a reasonable sum, not a fortune, but enough to bring genuine comfort to his family. He purchased the items his elder daughters had requested. Fine fabrics were wrapped in paper and carefully packed. Jewels were selected and boxed. Dresses were commissioned from the finest dressmakers in the city. He spent lavishly on them, pleased to be able to restore something of the life they had lost. And then, on the morning he was to depart for home, he remembered his promise to Belle. The merchant set out early, before dawn, to find a flower merchant or a conservatory where he might procure a rose. But this proved more difficult than he had anticipated. It was winter, and roses were scarce. The few he found were either house flowers of extraordinary cost or blooms that were already beginning to fade, their petals loose and browning at the edges. Disappointed, he abandoned his search in the city and set out on his journey homeward. He told himself that surely, in the spring, when roses grew freely again, he would find something suitable for his youngest daughter. For now, he would return home with the fine things for her sisters, and Belle would understand. She always understood. But as he rode through the forest roads towards home, the weather worsened dramatically. What had been merely cold became bitterly frigid. Snow began to fall, not gently, but in thick, swirling clouds that obscured the path ahead. His horse grew frightened, stumbling over ground that had become treacherous with ice. His horse grew frightened. The merchant was lost. For what felt like hours, though it may have been less, he rode through the white darkness, increasingly certain that he would perish in the cold. His fingers grew numb inside his gloves, his face stung with the bite of freezing air. The horse beneath him moved more slowly, exhausted and terrified. And then, quite suddenly, the forest opened before him. The snow fell away, though not as though he had ridden out of the snowstorm, but rather as though the weather itself had changed at the boundaries of this place. Before him stretched a landscape that seemed to exist in a different season entirely. The snow beneath his horse's hooves gave way to green grass. The bare trees of winter were replaced by, was it possible, by trees in full leaf? By flowering plants, by gardens that seemed to exist in a state of eternal spring? And beyond the gardens rose a castle. The merchant stared at it in wonder and confusion. The castle was vast and beautiful, its architecture intricate and fanciful, its stone pale as moonlight, its towers reaching upward into a sky that was neither day nor night, but some luminous twilight state. Lights burned in the windows, suggesting habitation, yet he had encountered no human being, no sign of any dwelling for miles before the forest opened. He dismounted and approached slowly, his exhaustion and the strange dream-like quality of this place making him feel as though he were moving through water. The castle doors opened before him, not by human hand, but as though responding to his approach. Warm air flowed out, and with it came the scent of flowers and something else, something indefinably welcoming. Inside, the castle was both empty and furnished in a state of perfect readiness. Candles burned in sconces along the walls, illuminating tapestries and paintings of extraordinary beauty. A table was set in the dining hall with food that steamed as though freshly prepared, roasted meats and fresh vegetables, bread that was still warm, wine in crystal glasses. Yet no person attended upon him. No servant appeared to greet him. The merchant, hunger and exhaustion overcoming his caution, sat and ate. He drank the wine, and afterward, following the silent guidance of doors that opened before him and corridors that seemed to lead him onward, he found a bedchamber prepared with fresh linens and a fire burning in the hearth. He slept deeply and without dreams. In the morning, he woke to find that night had not passed normally. It was bright daylight, yet the sun was not in a position consistent with any morning he had ever known. The light that fell through the windows was golden and perfect, the kind of light that painters attempted to capture but rarely achieved. Clean clothes had been laid out for him. He dressed and returned to the dining hall where a fresh breakfast awaited. Again, there was no one to serve him, yet everything was precisely as he might have wished. It was only as he finished his meal that the merchant remembered his promise to Belle. And it was at that precise moment that he glanced out the window and saw in the garden beyond a rose. It was not simply a rose, but the rose, a bloom of such perfect beauty and vivid crimson color that it seemed almost to glow with inner light. In all his years, in all the gardens and conservatories he had visited, the merchant had never seen its equal. It seemed to embody every ideal of what a rose could be. Without further thought, driven by a strange compulsion, and by the urgent desire to fulfill his promise to Belle, the merchant walked out into the garden. The air was warm and sweet-scented. The grass beneath his feet was soft as velvet. He approached the rose, marveling at its perfection, and reached out his hand to pluck it. As his fingers closed around the stem, everything changed. The golden light vanished. The pleasant warmth turned to a bitter cold that seemed to cut directly to his bones. The rose in his hand crumbled, its petals turning to ash that slipped through his fingers. And before him, where there had been nothing but empty garden a moment before, a figure stood. It was, the merchant understood immediately, a beast. He was monstrously tall, his form more animal than human, though not quite either in its totality. His face was the face of some great predator, tusks protruding from his lower jaw, eyes yellow as sulfur, a mane of dark hair running down his spine. His hands were clawed, his body covered in dark fur. He was, quite possibly, the most terrible thing the merchant had ever seen, and the rage that burned in those yellow eyes was absolute. "You have betrayed my hospitality," the beast said, and his voice was something between a growl and human speech, containing qualities of both. "I gave you shelter and food. I asked nothing of you, and you would rob me of the one thing I treasure?" The merchant fell to his knees, terror robbing him of the power of rational thought. He stammered apologies and explanations. He had not known, he had meant no harm. It was for his daughter, a promise made without understanding what he promised. "A promise," the beast repeated, and something in his tone shifted. "A daughter who asked for nothing. A daughter who wished for a rose and nothing more. Such a daughter would be a rare thing indeed." He paused, and when he spoke again, there was something almost like consideration in his words, though his appearance had not softened in the slightest. "I will make you a bargain, merchant. You may take this rose to your daughter. You may give it to her with my blessing. But in exchange, she must come to me. She must come willingly to this castle and remain here as my guest. If she agrees to this, I will release you. If she does not, if she refuses and you attempt to flee, then I will pursue you to the ends of the earth and reclaim what is owed to me." The merchant's blood seemed to freeze in his veins. "You ask me to give my daughter to you? To offer her as payment?" "I ask for her agreement," the beast said. "Let that much be clear. She must come willingly, or the bargain is void. But if she comes of her own accord, if she chooses to take your place, then I will treat her with all the courtesy a guest deserves. She will want for nothing, but she must choose." The merchant wanted to refuse. He wanted to defy this creature, this impossible thing. But as he looked at the beast, as he saw the profound loneliness in those terrible yellow eyes, the way the powerful form seemed to carry some terrible burden, he found himself unable to refuse entirely. "I will tell her," he heard himself say. "I will tell her what you have said, but she will refuse. She will not agree to such a thing." The beast seemed almost to smile, though the expression was terrible to behold. "Perhaps," the beast said, "but you will tell her. You will show her this rose and tell her that you picked it at the cost of a promise, and then we shall see what a daughter who asked for nothing but a rose will choose to do." With a gesture, the beast produced the rose. It lay in his clawed hand, perfect and unmarred, as though it had never been touched. The merchant took it with shaking fingers. "Go," the beast said, and his voice carried a finality that brooked no argument. Then, turning to flee, he heard the beast's voice once more, calling out as though from a great distance. "But if she comes willingly, perhaps something may yet be undone." Part 4. The Gift and the Choice. The merchant's return home took less than a day. Where his outbound journey through the forest had been harrowing and slow, his return seemed to occur in a state of dreamlike rapidity. One moment he was fleeing from the castle, the rose clutched in his trembling hand. The next, he found himself emerging from the forest onto the familiar roads that led to his home. His family was overjoyed to see him return safe. His sons embraced him. His daughters clustered around him, eager to examine the fine things he had brought from the city. But he moved through their celebration as though in a trance, his mind consumed by the choice he had been forced to make, and the impossible burden he was about to place on his youngest daughter. When his elder daughters had been satisfied with the gifts and had departed to admire their new possessions, the merchant called Belle into his study. She came at once, as she always did, with an easy obedience that came from genuine affection rather than duty. "Father," she said, settling herself across from him, "you look troubled. Was your journey difficult?" The merchant looked at his youngest daughter, really looked at her, as though for the first time or as though for the once and for all time, and felt something break inside him. He withdrew the rose from the pocket where he had carried it, wrapped carefully in fine cloth to preserve it from damage. As he uncovered it, the bloom seemed to glow in the lamplight of the study, its crimson petals absolutely perfect, its fragrance filling the small room with sweetness. Belle's eyes widened, and she rose to examine it more closely, her fingers hovering just above the petals as though afraid to damage something so beautiful. "It is the most extraordinary rose I have ever seen," she whispered. "Where did you find it, Father?" And so, his voice breaking, the merchant told her everything. He spoke of the journey through the forest, the strange castle that appeared in the midst of winter, the hospitality he had received, and the terrible discovery of the rose in the garden. He described the beast, or attempted to, though his words seemed inadequate to convey the reality of that monstrous figure. And he told her of the bargain that had been offered, painful and impossible as it was. When he had finished, Belle sat in silence for a long moment. Her eyes moved between her father and the rose, and her expression was difficult to read. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. "You should not have picked the rose," she said, but there was no accusation in her tone. "You should have left it where it grew." "I know," the merchant said miserably, "but I had promised you. I did not think that—" "Father." Belle reached across and took his hand, looking up into his face with those intelligent eyes that had always seen so much. "You are not responsible for this," you said, Colin. "You could not have known, and you must not blame yourself." She paused, and then she asked, "Tell me truthfully, is this beast truly terrible? Is he cruel and vicious, or simply, perhaps, lonely?" The merchant hesitated, considering the question seriously. "He was angry," he said slowly, "but in his anger there was more pain than malice. And when I spoke to him of you, when I told him of a daughter who asks for nothing but a rose, something seemed to shift in him. It was as though he saw in you something he wanted to understand." Belle nodded slowly, and a strange calm seemed to settle over her. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening evening. When she turned back to face her father, her decision was written clearly on her face. "I will go," she said simply. "No!" The merchant stood up abruptly. "Belle, you cannot. I will not allow it. There must be some other way. Perhaps if I offered money, or—" "There is no other way," Belle said, and there was a certainty in her voice that made the merchant fall silent. "And you need not allow or forbid, Father. I am a woman grown, and this is my choice to make. You picked the rose to fulfill a promise to me. I will go to this beast to honor that promise and to free you from this obligation." "Belle!" "Father, listen to me." She came to him and took both his hands, looking up into his face with those intelligent eyes that had always seen so much. "In all the books I have read, in all the stories I have studied, there is a truth that emerges again and again. Beauty is not what appears on the surface. It is not found in fine clothes or fashionable features or the admiration of society. True beauty is something deeper. It is found in goodness, in courage, in the willingness to sacrifice for those we love." She squeezed his hands gently. "If I do not go, I am asking you to carry the guilt of this promise for the rest of your life. But if I go, perhaps I can discover something. Perhaps this beast is not truly a beast at all, but something else entirely, something that has been made to appear monstrous by circumstance or curse or his own nature. And if I can see him clearly, perhaps I can understand him. Perhaps I can help him." "You are too good," the merchant said, tears running down his weathered face. "You are too good, and the world will take advantage of your goodness." "Perhaps," Belle said calmly, "but what is the alternative? To live in fear? To spend my life knowing that my father is in pain because of a promise I asked him to make? No, Father, I will go, and I will go with the rose, and I will give it to him, and I will see what comes of it." The merchant wanted to argue further, but he recognized in his daughter a strength and a clarity of purpose that would not be moved. He had raised her to think for herself, to make her own choices, and now she was doing exactly that. "On the third day," he said finally, "we will go to the forest together. If you still wish to go when we reach the edge of that place, I will not prevent you, but perhaps you will change your mind." Belle smiled gently. "I will not change my mind, Father, but yes, we will go together, and perhaps I will not regret this choice." That night Belle lay in her small chamber, the rose placed carefully in a pitcher of water on her windowsill. She looked at it for a long time, wondering about the creature who had produced it, about the castle that existed in a space between winter and spring, between the real and the impossible. She thought of her sisters, sleeping in their beds with new jewels on their fingers and new fabrics in their chambers, content with what they had received. She thought of her father, carrying the weight of his bargain with a creature that seemed half mad with loneliness. And she thought about herself, about the strange contentment she had found in service and in books, in the quiet observation of life, rather than the desperate pursuit of its prizes. Whatever came next, Belle realized, she would meet it with the same quiet courage she had learned from her reading. She would go to the castle, she would see this beast with her own eyes, and she would discover, perhaps, that the world contained more strangeness and more possibility than even the greatest books had taught her to expect.
And so we leave Belle on the eve of her departure. The miraculous rose glowing softly on her windowsill, the castle waiting in the forest for a visitor who would come not in fear or desperation, but in conscious choice, the most dangerous gift of all. The story of Beauty and the Beast is, at its heart, a story about transformation, but not the kind that happens through magic spells or external enchantments. It is the transformation that comes through truly seeing another person, through the willingness to look beneath surfaces and to find beauty in places the world has marked as ugly. Tomorrow, Belle will enter the castle, But tonight she sleeps with a rose on her sill and a quiet understanding in her heart that sometimes the greatest adventures are the ones we choose for ourselves. Until next time, my dear listeners, rest well. Dream perhaps of enchanted castles and gardens that bloom eternal, and when you return, we will see what happens when Belle steps into a world that exists outside the normal rules of nature and time. Thank you for spending this evening with me. I'll see you again soon.